Evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And I just saw John's YouTube, and he had a little adventure, and I guess he's still on it. And I'm putting on my paranormal visor. This allows me to see into the future, right? And I'm looking at this is like you remember Romper Room and the lady who was the hostess of Romper Room, and she had this magic mirror that she would look through the mirror and she would see the good boys and girls, doobies. That's what she used to call them, doobies. Which I think she was smoking a few of those, and so uh, there's actually a little something on there. Yeah. Anyway, and here we are in September, and I'm looking at the peripheral of the near future, and I've been studying the cause of human cultural, uh, social, political, economic friction, and that cause is this dynamic of separation, right? The separation of ourselves, and it's our brain. We have two sides, and we have two ears, two eyes, and so it's almost biological that we'd be separated, right? But there is this one gland, hypothalamus, not hypothalamus, the pineal gland, right? And it is our third eye, and it is that window into knowing who and what you are. And that sense of not knowing who and what you are is that sense of separation from love's co creation. And so that is what causes war, because we have this conflict between um, unconditional love, which is love of, John's little video, is this video, and he's trying to explain his, what happened to him, right? And oh, do, 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 do. Hmm. It's very interesting, but anyway, I'll have to figure out that one out. Mm, mm, mm.
Hi. Oh, I stepped on a piece of popcorn. I stepped on a piece of popcorn. Hey, 2 people watching already. This is pretty amazing.
Yep.
Hi. I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Houston, Texas. And you should have seen what happened. spill my heart to Jesus. To Jesus, of course. Spill my heart to Jesus. So this is really live right now. So I went here to see my kids, and my mom was here actually to see Danica and my kids, and my mom flew here too. And we hung out with Rowan and Ivan, and I saw Danica and the baby. Danica, the baby, the boys, Rowan, Ivan, their baby sister Ayla, and their mom Danica. So I went to their house a bunch, and then now I'm in this hotel. And this is really scary what happened to me. This is really scary what happened to me. It was so scary. They took me away in a police car. And they took me away in a police car for just being sleepy. And it wasn't Danica's fault. My mom and Danica helped me go. And it was like something that God told me to do. That God told me to do. Like, my mom kept asking me questions. But see, when I got here, I started giving my all to Jesus and God. To God and Jesus. And I was doing relentless God's work to show my kids about God and Jesus in the Bible. And I'm going to try to not show myself because I don't want to be as into my appearance. But it doesn't make that much of a difference, I think. But I don't know. And so I'm trying to be as kind and good as I can. So I was doing relentless God's work, and this came from the mental place that they put me in for like 2 weeks, or more than 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks. They took me away. See, I kept going without sleep and going without sleep. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and be so worried about them. I'd think, I gotta show them God and Jesus. I gotta show them God and Jesus. I was worried that, I was worried for them. I wanted them to get into heaven and really find God and Jesus more than ever. And they already found God and Jesus kind of, because I've been talking to them about it, but I had to come here and show them in person and be a good dad. And my dad texted on the other line, or my mom. And so what I did was kept talking to them about God and Jesus relentlessly, showing up at their house. One time I kept knocking on their door all night and being out in front of their house saying, please.
So this is what I'm talking about, the duality of conditional love and unconditional love. Right? And that's why John is the canary in the coal mine of our social dilemma. And he's like Plato's cave, right? And that's why John is kind of special in a way that most people can't even understand. They think he's crazy, or someone, when I commented on John's thing that John was really talented and really amazing, they said, "What? He's just a crazy, stupid, blah 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 blah." Right? He's not. In a lot of ways, and this is what John does. He references his actions and himself as without. He's always talking about this, that, or the other thing, and but he's not realizing that he is going through what Jesus tried to show us, through his experience on the cross. And we all do that in some way or another until we hit an understanding. We either realize what our life's about, and in this material world, it's hard to have a spiritual experience. You can, everyone thinks they're supposed to be somewhat, but spiritual, and they can't, quite grasp that experience. So they go along with going to church and reading the Bible, which is not a bad thing. Church is a nice community if it's a nice community. And I've gotten myself, since I had my cataracts removed, I involved myself with 3 churches because, I couldn't see, someone had to drive me to the place, blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of, and it was the week that everyone in churches reads about the Good Samaritan. So all these people wanted to be a good Samaritan. So they, you know, took me to the hospital. They kind of took care of me for about a week until I could see, and then now I see, and I actually see really well. But the other things, yeah, my diabetic eyes and other things that are affecting my eyes are still kind of there. I have the floaters and the goop and all that kind of stuff. But I can now see. Before I was getting to the point where I really couldn't see. So now I can see, and that's a good thing. And all these folks took care of me for a week, and I went to all of their churches. Right, and the last 3 Sundays I've been going to their churches, and there are 3 different churches I go to. One is the Ku Klux Klan Southern Baptist Church. Right, all white people. They've never met a black person. They don't know what a black person is, so they construe what it is, just like liberals construe what MAGA people are. And these people, I mean, they are somewhat MAGA, but they're not really because they're so they have a hard time putting food on the table. Meaning they're more like poor black people in this inner cities and the urban areas, and these people are in the same situation. They have the same problem of the majority of them, dying early, being addicted to alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. And fentanyl is wiping them out. And before it was that, it was OxyContin. And before it was that, it was meth. So it's a smorgasbord of drugs. And they are so minimalized that their crimes are really almost they can't commit there is violence here, but they do it to themselves, and that's pretty much all violence, right? Except for state violence, right? And state violence is that same thing of that separation of conscious understanding of love. So the state says, you do what we say, when we say jump, you jump, and then we'll love you. Maybe, right? That's what the state says, right? That's very conditional love. And that's why we having war in the Ukraine, because Russia has said to Ukraine, you do what I say and we'll love you. If not, it's all you'll be dead. We're gonna kill you all, right? And I don't know if the two Vlads are in on the the scripted thing that's occurring there, or whether they're just being played. And even if they think they know what's going on, they're still being played, and pretty much everyone is, even your Sensei Al Bob. But I have so little, that I can be unbelievably grateful. I mean, I really appreciate everything I have. So when I got these, futuristic goggles, and I gave me because they're really good for. So when I had the eyes operated on and got rid of my glaucoma, one thing it did do is it made my eyes. My eyes have always been pretty sensitive to light, but now it made it super duper. So these things really guard, you know, keeps the bright light out, but it allows you to see the future, right? And so and that's a paranormal experience. And I'm living in a paranormal wonderland. So the rich are coming in here, buying up everything, ripping up everything, and not spending a second of appreciation of where they are. And so I'm here. I probably won't be able to stay here. Um, right now, this summer, I thought the summer was going to be, oh my God, but not really. It's been really an amazing summer, right? It's because I've been, the inflation. I can't go anywhere. I can't drive anywhere. My car is about to fall apart. I have no money to fix it. No one watches this show, but again, it is this. I am the pebble in the paranormal, um, shamanic pond, and I was looking. I woke up. Oh, I don't know, about 4 in the morning. I'd take a piss. Went outside, take a piss, and the stars were. It's been really rainy all season, right? And last night wasn't cloudy. It was clear as a bell, and the moon had already gone down, and the stars were out there. I could see the galaxies. It was quite amazing. And I have this nice deck, and I have a. I used to, my legs are still really messed up, but I can put myself into homeostasis and I can get around. And I used to have metal clamps on my legs and use a walker and a wheelchair and all the above. But now I don't. But I still have the wheelchair, and on my deck, it's really nice. It's very comfy, and I can wheel around. So um, I was, you know, I was wheeling around, getting different views of the sky. And when I got to this one point, I locked it in, and it allows me to like lean back and look up relatively, I mean, straight up, relatively comfortably, and without having to lie down, right? And I have a number of little, what I call prayer shawl, um, which are places when I cleared up my property when I had some money. I made a number of what they say is, places where you can build a uh, a building on, right? And a pad. That's what they call it, a pad. Where you level it off, you put down big rocks and then smaller rocks, and then you can build, anything you want on top of that. And it's not going to go anywhere. And so, and it's well drained, blah blah blah. But that was, 16 years ago, and forest is growing up around it, not like the big trees are around that place I cleared off. So, um, it's like a park, right? So I have all these pads, and I have paths going up to them, and I have, um, a tarp over them, and I have hammocks, right? So I have 3 or 4 different places where you can, sit and lie. It has chairs up there, has table up there, I can write, um, and they're all extraordinarily different, different elevations, different views through the forest, some warmer than others, and so I have all these just beautiful places to go sit and think. So I have a lot of time on my hands to think, right? And then that thinking brings forth writing, and I write. And then my writing, I sit and read, right? Which then makes me think. And so um, that's what all my novels were about. And again, I sent my novels out to a number of people. Everyone who had Google got them and could read them, and everyone who didn't, you blocked it. I didn't block it. I had no idea that if you didn't have Google, you couldn't read it. So anyway, and that's so I'm not, I have to drive a mile to drive up a guy's driveway to sit in his driveway and talk to you guys, right? So or go to a diner, but 3 or 4 different places I go. I don't go unless I have other things to do. Like, I have a bunch of things to do, so I may talk to you again. But right now, um, that little slip of Johnny Boy, I mean, if you go to his thing, you'll see him do the whole story, and you'll get, look at John and say, instead of saying, "Oh, look at this fool," or "Look, oh, this poor guy, I feel pity for him," look at it like you're looking into a mirror. That's you. When you see John, that's you, right? And that may give you a pause to think, hmm. And you may get some level of perspective, right? So, these aren't the end times because, I mean, if you wanted to see the end times, you should have seen the days of the 900 years of dark ages. They call them dark ages for a reason, right? And everyone thinks that, oh man, we are so cool. We got cars, we got our smartphones, we got our laptops. We're still we are still cavemen. We have not enlightened ourselves. We have not had a point of reference of consciousness, right? We're still stuck in the mud, right? And again, John is a great picture of someone who's real, he doesn't understand what he's going through. And that's why it's a paranormal experience because he has not a clue. And, you know, the people, so he spent, I guess he spent a couple of weeks in a mental institution, right? And so John is not crazy. He doesn't fit. He's neurotic, right? And so they give him some pills and send him on his way. And that's what you see. All of the drugs that are designed. I mean, all of the drugs are there mostly because of profit, and that they were, especially medical procedures, were developed during war, right? And a lot of the antipsychotic drugs were developed during war because, man, you see the most horrific things: people blown up, on fires, children running and screaming. I mean, wasn't until we saw that little picture of that little girl in Vietnam running down naked because she had just been napalmed, and she's all glistening because her skin has been burnt off. Bang, it's not even there. So it's all you're seeing is the fascia, right? And she's screaming, right? All her clothes are burned off. She's running down the road. And that's really what got America out of that war, that picture, right? Because it struck us to the core of what we were doing, right? And what's going on in Russia and Ukraine is like Russia has taken, and I keep talking about this stuff, and no one seems to listen. It's, somebody just texted me a little message. Remember, guys, you got to put it in the capitals. Let's see, who is it? Sandra. Hello, Bob. It's always sweet to have someone reference that I exist. I've been doing these shows the last few days, so no one's watching. I'm saying I don't care because it's going into the collective unconscious, right? And I'm got my time glasses on, and basically what I'm seeing is we have 2012 Piscean age ends. We're in the Aquarian age, right? And that's why everyone's so screwed up is that they won't let go of their ego, because ego is first of all, ego is an illusion to begin with. That's the only thing that exists is love, co-creation. And if you're not in, I mean, we are here in this bag of water, right? This is our avatar. This ain't us. You're not your body, right? Death is, I've died 7 times. Death is not a big deal, right? It can be scary, it can be inconvenient, it can be a lot of things. But if you step back and get the big picture of what it is, and then feel grace, humility, and unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness, and letting go, death can be an amazing experience. I was a EMT, I was surgical EMT. I was a guy who I'd be, we go to the car crash or whatever, and I'd be in the back keeping the person alive. And especially if it was a bad accident, or a gunshot wound or something, I would go, we wouldn't just unload it and drive away. I would go in to the emergency room, and we have already been, communicating to them because our bus was all wired. I mean, I would put all the sensors on the person, and they would be getting that data back in the emergency room, right? So they'd have a good idea. We actually had TV cameras, and I actually had little scopes I could stick into people. We had technology I bet you they don't even use today, because this was at Cornell, and we would take it to they had a big trauma center, and it was mostly research, right? And so we had some serious technology because we were, I mean, Cornell was paying for our little volunteer fire department. We had a very special group of people, and so I would go into the hospital. There's two of us who were surgical EMTs, and we would wheel these guys into the emergency room. They'd be waiting for us. They'd have people, with their clipboards and everything, and we'd hand it off to them. But we would go with them and give them all of the 411 of what happened, right? And these car crashes were our little house, our firehouse was right in our zone, was right, not in Ithaca, just off in this little town called Verona. And it was 91 and another interstate. I forget which one, but they crossed each other. They didn't have a clover leaf. And and it was just a big X, and cars would be crossing over to get over here and go there, and little cars would get run over by big trucks, and so it was a lot of it was like a war zone, right? I mean, we would go to that place 3 or 4 times a week, and some of them, the worst one that was there was this mama in her little, soccer mom van with 3 kids in it, and she's, zipping along, and she crosses, to go cross the highway into the other highway, and this, truck hits her and flips her over into the air where she's wee, 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 and goes into the oncoming traffic and hits an oncoming garbage truck, right? Full of garbage. And, these things are built like tanks. And he's doing about 60, she's doing about 70 flying through the air. And she's in the air and he smacks her straight on to the side. And now she's doing this and about 5 other things. And she's been stopped for a second and then flipped up, and half of her car has been crushed in, and then it flies through the air and smashes into an abutment on the other side of the highway. That's where we find these people. And when we find them, the vehicle's upside down, which is hard to get at people. Normally, we use the jaws of life and clip off the posts of the car. And that's like where right here, the posts are right holding up the roof, right? And we clip those off and just, you know, pull the roof off, and then we can get at people, right? And then we had this other jaws of life that pushes out, and we had this tool that makes a hole, and we stick the thing in there, do this, and which is no matter how stuck or crushed the doors were, we could snap them off in like 20 seconds. So in 3 or 4 minutes, if the vehicle was on its tires, no matter how smashed up it was, we could clip off the roof and snap off the doors and have access to the people immediately, right? And we had this other thing that we would put under the vehicle, and it would foam up the whole bottom of the car. So if the gas or anything was leaking, it would cover it up, right? So we had some serious technology, and this is in the 80s, right? And 88, 89, 90. I left in 91 to go to Asheville. But anyway, the two worst of the worst of these situations that we would go to was this soccer mom. And we got there, and the vehicle was crushed in 5 different ways, like a sardine can, and it was on its roof. So we had no real access, right? And the gas was all over the place. So we first had to foam it down and clear out the gas. And then we had to, and my job, I wasn't, I was schooled as a fireman, but my real job was to assess the vi- viability of the people inside the car, whether they're dead or alive or really fucked up or not so much. Anyway, so, the windows are smashed out, and I could stick my little head in there and look around. And man, Mama was, when that garbage truck smashed in the front of her while she was flying through the air, it crushed the whole front of her van towards her. And the steering column went through her chest, through her seat, and through her daughter behind her, right? And when that happened, the other daughter, who was over there in the back seat, there were 2 daughters in the back seat, and 1 little girl in the front, right? And the the girl behind Mama, it was like a kebab. Mom and daughter were on the steering column, and the motor was like crushed half of Mom. So half of Mom was crushed by the motor, and the steering column went through her chest and through her daughter behind her, right? And the sister over there, she got knocked around. She didn't have her safety belt on, and the first smash smashed all the glass. Safety glass just kind of went away, and there were still raggedy edges. And her head went out the window, and the truck scraped it off. So her head was scraped on the side of the van there. right? So there was a body, lots of blood because it just blood everywhere, and from the mom and daughter kebab, blood everywhere. Mom's crushed half, her whole front gone, but the little girl was thrown into the the footwell of the passenger seat, and the way the car got crushed, that was the only part that didn't really get crushed. So she was stuck down there. She couldn't see anything. She had all these nasty smells of gasoline and dead bodies. Boy, bodies smell very. When you go to the toilet and you shit, just think of all of that exploded out of your body all over the place, right? So that's what the sign looked like. So everyone's like, "This is the worst of the worst that we've seen," right? So everyone's working to like safely take the car apart so we can get at this little girl, right? Because everyone's dead, right? So there's no sense in doing it how. So we cut out on the side of the car. We take that door off and cut out the thing, and I take the little girl out, right? And I have a white sheet. And at first I said, "Honey, I'm going to cover you. My name's Al. I'm here." Is my mommy okay? I said, "They're okay. We've taken them away, but you're stuck in the car, and we had to cut you out. And there's gasoline everywhere, so we have to do this really carefully. And we're gonna be making a lot of noise, and so I'm gonna put these little earmuffs on you, and I'm going to cover you in this first a sheet, and then there's this heavy duty blanket. It'll protect you from anything, and it was like a fireproof, canvasy kind of safety blanket we had, and normally use it to snuff people out if they were on fire. So anyway, I do. I cover in a sheet, white sheet, and then I cover this, and I stay right there while the rest of the crew is cutting her out. And I'm just talking. It's okay. My name's Al, and so Where are you come? What were you doing? I said, "Oh, we were out of soccer." Okay, and who was my sister was playing? Uh-huh. She had a great day. Oh, that's great. She had a great day. That's great. Your mom was happy. Oh yeah, mom was happy. Everything was great until I don't know what happened. We were in the air, and then I said, "No, no, don't. Just tell me about. Do you have any pets?" And I just went like that, talking to her all about things that had nothing to do with the accident. Every time she kind of would say, "What's mom? Can I speak to mom?" And I said, "No, she. We had to take her away. She was got a little hurt, but anyway." So you know, and I said, "Don't worry, I'm here. I'll always be here. I will be here until you get back with your family." And she goes, "Oh, okay." So we talked about this, and she asked questions about me, and we're having this very interesting, almost everyday kind of conversation. And we finally cut her out. I don't uncover it all, so I'm going to keep you. There's all this really dangerous stuff. I'm just going to keep you covered. I'm going to bring you over to the ambulance. I'm going to put you in there. I'm going to strap you in the gurney. Going to take you to the emergency room, and we're going to check you out, and your family will be there, right? So um, we're going, and now she's not covered, and she can see my face, and she goes, "Oh, you're handsome." I said, "Oh, gee, thanks." And I said, "And you're really cute." And we start talking. She's, I don't know, maybe 11, and so and we're talking, and I said, "So where's your father?" And she goes, "Oh, my father's dead. He had a heart attack last year." I said, "Ay, ay, ay." And I said, "And your grandparents?" And she says, "No." I said, "You have any family, uncles, aunts?" And she goes, "Not really. There's one in." I said, "Okay." So anyway, so she's just lost her whole family. She's got no one, and she's never going to want to look at what her mom and sisters look like. So, you know, take her to the hospital. There's a psychologist there. They take her to the children's section. That's beautiful little room and with toys and stuff. And they have the I mean, these guys were so ahead of their time. They had an animal that you could pet. "I love this dog," And so I just stay there with her. And I said, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here. I'm not. Don't you have to go back to work?" I said, "Nope. I'm with you. You know." And so I stay with her. Stay with her. Night comes. The hospital knows me. They said, "You can go home." I said, "No, I'm staying with this girl. I promised her I'd be with her, right?" And so I stayed there for 3 days. They gave me a little place to sleep. I knew the doctors, I knew everybody. They were like, "This is great. You are that person that she made the connection with. We, who they, she's accepting us because we're your friend, and she is, glammed onto you. So you're doing the right thing." So and this is the whole thing with stress and trauma. You have to deal with it immediately. And so we did. And after by the third day, she's 11 years old. She knows, she's a smart kid. And she said, "So my mom and sisters are dead." I said, "You're right." And I said, "How long did you know that?" She goes, "Well, before you showed up, I was screaming for them and no one mentioned anything. And I just got so upset that I kind of went unconscious." I said, "Yeah, that's your body does that. That's called trauma." And so, and then she said, "The first thing that I saw and heard was you. You had your head stuck upside down above me, and I couldn't move. And you were just saying, 'It's okay. We're gonna get you out of here. We just got to be calm, breathe, don't breathe.'" So we got her out. We got her to the hospital. We got her through that trauma. A nurse at that hospital said, "I'm going to take this little girl home." And she had a big family. She had a bunch of kids. She had animals. She lived on a farm there out near Seneca Lake. It was really far away from any noise or anything. She was a trauma psych nurse. I mean, she was the perfect person, right? So she took care of her, and I would go visit her, you know, a good deal. And that lady, you know, basically adopted her, right? And so I, would see her and do it. And so that was the most horrific of of things that I saw as a fireman, right? At least in a car crash, right? And yet, it because of unconditional love, it for the for the survivor, it turned out the best. Right? And so that has always been my. I'm gonna start to cry here because when I left Ithaca in '91, I didn't go back there until 2004 or five because a friend of mine moved to Ithaca. He was a chiropractor, right? And so he moved there and started practice. He had one in Virginia, and he got tired of Virginia, and he moved. He found a nice house in Ithaca. He really loved Ithaca. And then he started talking about he came from this place in Virginia, and some people said, "Oh, do you know Al Bob?" So I say, "Oh, Bob." He said, "Oh, yeah, he's a really good friend." He goes, "Oh." So anyway, he heard all of these stories of me, and he would kept coming. "You need to come and visit. People here love you. Blah blah blah. You need to come back." And I would still be in Ithaca if they didn't have the what they call the lake effect. I mean, it'd be 60 in the morning in February, and then I would be in my office or teaching or something, and I would come out, and it would be like 10 feet of snow and 20 degrees below zero. It's like spring, summer, fall, great, right? And so and we went in those 3 years I was there. We went through some pretty amazing things, and that's for another time. But this thing of unconditional love and conditional love, right? So the other thing we went to, so we never really, in the 3 years I was a volunteer fireman, we only responded to two fires. And by the time we showed up, um, there was an explosion in both of them, and the explosion put out the fire. I mean, we had to go around and put little fires out, but the big fire, it, boom! There was a chicken farm that had a big tank of propane to keep the chickens thing, and the fire got to that, and bam! I mean, we're driving up to it, we're about a mile away. Bam! It blew up the top of the, you know, and everything was on fire big time. And with that gigantic propane tank going off, boom! It blew everything out. Now, if our fire truck, if we were 5 minutes faster and gotten there, we'd all be dead. But we weren't supposed to, so we're about a mile away, and we're heading towards this big blaze. Oh wow, we're gonna have our first fire. Bam! We put it out. And there was another fire similar to that. That was mm, I don't know what to call it. It was a tire. It was a really nasty kind of garbage pit, and the same thing. It was tire, fire, and it was so smoky, so nasty. Couldn't even get close to it. And we were trying to figure out, if our air packs would take care of it. How are we gonna? Because you couldn't put the other guys who were there, who had to leave because they all got sick. Was they were dumping water on it, was just almost making the fire worse. So we were thinking, so again, we were a few months, we're at top of this hill, we are we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do. And it was a gigantic explosion, and all of these tires went flying through the air and put out the fire. And there was somebody stuck something extremely volatile in that pile of junk. And when the fire got to it and was really hot, thing blew up and blew the fire out. So the two fires we could have fought, and they would have been pretty hard fires to fight. They're both blown up by explosions. It was quite interesting. Um, but the majority of our work were car crashes, and there was this oh what do you call old folks home, right? But it wasn't a building. It was this corporation that bought old trailer parks and kicked everyone out and put people their own trailer so they'd have their own home, and they fed them, and they had a little medical thing there, and they called that a and this was a corporate. This is '80s when medicine was going corporate big time, right? Profit. It was a profit oriented um what you call it old folks home, and so it's supposed to feed them, it's supposed to have a their own home, and so it mostly got people who were vets and policemen and people who had a pretty good insurance, and they were just milking it, right? And they were giving them peanut butter jelly sandwiches and just leaving them, and no one coming to check on them. And so people, this one lady, and they supposed to have, they had a little button like a garage opener that's supposed to, if they had a problem, they push that and the people would be right there. Well, no, 40 people in the 3 years I was there, about 40 people died a year because of bad being taken care of. They had no real nurses. They had a few, you know, really people who didn't care, just was watching TV. So even if that little clicker worked, they weren't even responding. And this one woman, she had oxygen, tank ran out, her oxygen level went down. She had a stroke, heart attack, dead. Right. So the ME told me that she probably suffered for 4 hours before she died. And he said, unbelievable. She, scared, petrified, and pain. And first she would go deaf, and then blind, and then she'd have 2 hours of that. Right. So there was a lot of that. Right. And so we would show up to clean up this scene. Right. And we showed up this one time, and we'd also show up when guys were like went nuts. The cops would be there, and our house, we had some really good people. A couple of the people were shrinks, and I was kind of a shrink, right? And I was a alternative healer. That's what my crew used to call me. They used to call me Doc. I mean, there were two other people who were really doctors, but I was the one they called Doc. I've had that nickname 3 or 4 times. So when I was at Brookhaven National Laboratories, everyone called me Doc. So anyway, um, this one time, um, you know, we get the call. The cops are there, and it looks like a suicide. A lot of people eat their gun, especially the military guys who still have this. And so we would show up for 3 or 4, you know, guys eating their gun a month, right? That's how bad this place was, right? And once they got there, they couldn't get out because part of the thing was the medical corporation had the people, because most everyone there had nobody to take care of, no kids, no family, no nobody, right? was one of the dynamics of this place. So no one cared about him outside the place, right? And so the corporation had these people give the corporation the power of attorney to the corporation and took their banking accounts. They could do whatever they wanted with their bank. I mean, it was a scam, and no one went to jail for this, right? Because the guy who was the president had a state senator on the board of this thing, right? So anyway, so we show up, and the highway patrol guys are there, and this is one guy we called Sarge because he was Sarge, and he was always in charge, right? He'd been at it forever. He had seen it, done it, and he's outside, right? And the ME's there, and he's not going in, right? And so the captain, me, and another one of the company, the three of us walked up to Sarge. Sarge, what's up? And he goes, "Well, I thought I'd seen everything, but you guys got to prepare yourself." And guys, I was the only guy. My captain was a woman, and the lieutenant was. Everybody was a woman in the firehouse, but me, two old guys, and two teenagers. So there's 30 women and five guys, right? And so, and back in that day, New York State, if you were a high school student and you volunteered in a volunteer fire department at 16 and up, New York State would send you to state college of your choice to get a college education. I don't know if they have that anymore, but they should have more of that because, volunteer fire departments they're almost going around here. All of them are closed down because no one's funding them. So anyway, we walk up to Sarge and say, "Sarge, what's up?" And he goes, "You guys won't believe this." He's like, "I've seen everything." I said, give us a 411, buddy." And he said, why no one's going in is that the guy ate his gun and blew off the back of his head. And he is dead. He is, rigor mortis, the whole thing. But I don't know what is going on, but he has, he's still in his body and he's screaming. And because, he says, and his heart's not pumping, his, lungs aren't working, but he's screaming. But he's not screaming too loud. He's, what's going on? You know. And so we went in there, and the the lieutenant, she was into the paranormal, right? And she was a shrink, and she was, into ghosts, and she was everything, you name it. I have a lot of skill sets, but this lady, anyway. So we go in there, and it is worse than you could. His brains are all over the place, all of. I mean, he so he blew up the top of his head and all his brains. So nothing should be working, but he is screaming and he's like going on. And he's cursing like a sailor, and the, the you know the lady who has more skill sets than I, we both look at each other and go, "She was demon possession." So that's what it was, and the place was like colder than an ice box, right? And anyway, so we left. We just kind of poked our head in and said, "Okay, this is going to be difficult." So I said, what we did was, since I was, almost a Catholic priest, we had our tanker right there, right, and so we asked this one guy who was, the guy who's supposed to feed these people. And so he's got, the cafeteria somewhat, but not really, and a kitchen somewhat. I said, "Do you have any salt?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I got," I said, "Bring all the salt you can find and in your kitchen and bring it here. Quick, 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 quick." Right? So he brought about, 40 pounds of salt in, two big 20-pound bags of salt. So we made a circle of salt around the thing, and the guy who was like the director of the old folks home is there, and he's freaking out, because everybody else, because the energy of this paranormal experience is starting to eke out. So that's why I made a circle of salt around everything. Right? I said, listen, we're going to have to set this thing on fire. The Emmy's here. He's going to sign off on this. And we have a fire truck right here. And we're going to, first hose it down, and then we're going to set it on fire. Right? So, as soon as we made the circle of salt around the trailer, um, the creature really started screaming. I mean, no longer with the guy. He was screaming out whatever it was like really. So it's Sarge, Lieutenant, my capped, and that was it. Everybody kind of went back. So the fire truck, I said, okay, we need a 2-inch line. Pull the truck back 200 feet, and our we had a tanker truck that had about 3,000 gallons of water. When we show up a fire. And you're doing it out there in the sticks. There are no fire hydrants anywhere. And so we had this tanker truck, right? So we put a hose on it, and it's also the pumper, and so that's our biggest thing. We had three vehicles. We had this big pumper tanker, and then we had our what we would call our tool box, right? And it was this truck that had every kind of amazing tool, a pneumatic tool, electric tool, lights, so we could light stuff up like a football stadium. I mean, it was had every kind of tool just for what we needed in its own little drawer. Everything was where it's supposed to be. It was our toolbox. That's what we called it. We had our tanker, our toolbox, and both those trucks were big fire trucks, but they weren't ladder trucks. We had no tall buildings, but we had a bunch of ladders if we had to go get a cat or something. But uh, so I take the rest of the salt and I dump it into the tank, right? And then I basically bless it, right? Just and I use the same blessing you do at um, when you baptize somebody, right? And when I went to preschool, I learned all these blessings. So that was good. I learned those. So I was taking every blessing I could, and I was blessing the water, right, to make it holy water, right, with lots of salt in it, right. So we pop our little head into the thing. I said, "So anybody want to say anything to the creature?" And everyone said, "No." What do you got to say? I said, "Listen, buddy, you either better get out of here, or else you're going to be, we're going to throw you." And he started screaming, "You can't do anything to me. I'm gonna." And the other guy who blew his head off, he was still kind of there. What's going on? So it's like that's really when I saw this duality of love. This is like 1989 when I right then I go, duality of love right here. I can see it. Conditional love and of the demon and this guy who was just so depressed blew his brains out, and the demon got in his head, and right. So and so I started talking about love, right? And love is the only thing. I said, buddy, if you want to get out of this bad situation, you have to start forgiving yourself. You have to forgive everyone who you think ever misjudged you, just let it go. It's the only way you're going to get out of it. Otherwise, it's gonna be an eternity for you. Even if we get this demon out of here, you're still going to be part of it. You have to put love 100% inside of you, or you're going to be stuck with this guy forever. It's your choice. I mean, you've been this guy, this demon that's been around you. Think back when you started hating everyone, right? Go to that place and see it was this guy who got a hold of you, and then take it to the other side. Up until you met this demon guy and he became part of you, what was your life then? Who did you love? How did you, And he started weeping, and the demon started screaming at him. So I said, okay. And I just said, start saying the Lord's Prayer. And so the guy did. And the demon started screaming, even, I'm going to get you, I'm going to. And that's as soon as the demon started threatening us, that's when we hit him with the fire hose. And the salt really knocked him down a big time, right? And so we, had the guys, already covered the thing in gasoline, but we were at the, just do the two ends and the top and the back side where this thing is. We're going to push it into that. And so set it on fire. We had our nice little kitty air packs on. And so we were hitting it with the 2-inch line, and it had come out of the guy's body, and the guy, boom, he was gone. He accepted love. He was unconditional love. Bang. He was no longer in the body. Creature in the corner. We're hitting it with the salty, holy water, and the fire is creeping up, and the steam is what got this thing right. The water kind of annoyed him, or it, right, but the steam, it shriveled him up, and he popped away. And we went back to the firehouse. The Sarge came with us, and we drank a lot, right? And we partied. And that was these girls. We'd had these you know, unbelievable paranormal, traumatic things, and they would be in shock. And then we would party for like 5 hours, right? And we were like a family. This crew was more my family at that time than any family I ever had. And so it was because we all depended on each other. Our lives were in each other's hands. It was like being, in the war zone, that kind of. And these girls were really into adrenaline. They were adrenaline junkies. So me, not so much. I was more into understanding things, and this was a good lens to look at things, right? And helping people. I mean, my basic thing is I love helping people. I love being there for folk, and that's why I've had as many good relationships as I've had. And that's what friends. I have friends. I have friends that I've had for 50 years. 50 years, and we have continents between us. But whenever they come and visit me, or I stumble into them, or we talk on the phone, it's like it was just yesterday that we were with each other. So that is the dynamics of this. It is being there for each other. It is there to love unconditionally. And when you can do that, that is when, see, no matter what we do politically, economically, socially, our system is wired in our brain. We're still cavemen. So we're still scared of scarcity, you know? I mean, I got so much stuff in my place, and I got rid of 98%. I say 2% of the stuff I've got left from my moneyed days. And what do I got? I got like, t-shirts and books and, tools, and not like fancy tools. Nobody wants my tools. You need an extension cord for them all. So, no one's going to steal my stuff because nobody wants my stuff. I tried to sell it at the flea market. Nobody wants it. So, basically, I'll just leave it, and it'll become an archaeological find in 1,000 years. So, and that's why I do this. This is because I am, shamanically dropping my spirit into the World Wide Web. Even though how many people are watching right now? Zero, probably one, maybe. And no thumbs up. Come on, let's at least have one thumbs up. There's nobody watching. Right? Nobody wants to hear this because it goes to that part of their spirit that isn't in their avatar. Their avatar is just thinking about going gorging, or I'm here for God and Jesus. No, no. God and Jesus is here for us. We are part of God. We are that burning bush, right? You know, when Moses was speaking to God, I am who I am, which he didn't say. He said, I am a work in progress, and you are my reflection. You know, why you are here is to experience things so I can learn to be the spirit I am. I am, right? So that's what it's about, you know. So if you think your life's about you, forget about it. And once you have kids, that is a physical dynamic that gives you a doorway to be your better self. But most parents can't do that. They become their worst selves. They beat the kids, they rape the kids, they torment the kids. Right? Do as I say, not as I do, you know. And even if your parents are pretty good, they still suck because they're stuck in this materialistic world of corruption, of power, and stupidity. And so that's what today's show what are you going to do with all this? You know, this is your opportunity, you know. So I'm here. I don't have, you know, I've had at certain times in my life, man, I had a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of, well, power and power. Well, I had power in that I knew who I was, and I knew I was the decider of what I was going to do with my life, and I did it. You know, for a good 60, I guess 64 years. I maybe 68 years. No, 64. I basically was, you know, I real estate, money in the bank, you know, investments, gold, you name it, I had it. And just before I died in 2014, I um, around 2006, because of people who I was working for, I realized that we were going to have a serious economic clash, similarly to the one that happened in '86, savings and loan class. But this one was going to be worse because savings and loans was just setting the pins up for '08, right? And in '86, I was doing this gig with my dad, real estate, blah, blah, blah. And I saw it coming, and I got ourselves in a position where we actually made money off of that collapse, right? And I was going to be a zillionaire. My dad always wanted to be a millionaire. Well, I was doing it. And he got so upset that we were doing it together, but he had no idea what I was doing. He didn't understand what I was doing. Our lawyer understood it because he was a real estate lawyer. And so he was like, go, Al, go. And I could write the check, right? And we were, with every investment I made, we were making more money, more money. More people, why are you buying it? Oh, it's terrible. It's 86. And so, you know, all building materials became super cheap. Everybody who could, you know, work didn't have a job, so they're desperate to work. So I put together some really great crews of guys who needed a second chance, you know, who overextended themselves. Then the crash happened. They lost everything. Their wives left them. They went into drinking and drugs, ended up in jail. And because they weren't real criminals, you know, they were in jail for a year or two. And then, you know, they came out and they couldn't get a job. There was no jobs. And if you knew what you were doing, if you were a lead carpenter, if you was this black guy that was amazing, and his father was amazing. His father was, you know, brilliant, and the guy was brilliant, and they had a small excavating company, and he didn't go the way that the white guys did, but the money dried up, and they just were just staying alive. And I started, you know, buying all these properties and building houses and buildings and you know, taking things, you know, we bought a lot of these burnt out buildings in this town called Sayville, Long Island, that were right on the edge. You know, 2 blocks over there, all the rich people. Everyone over here was poor and you know, in jail and doing drugs. Right. So there's part of this road had all these businesses on them, like garages and, you know, stores, and they all had been burnt out for the insurance money. Right. And the insurance guys would make them, at the very least, put a roof on these buildings, right? So they did. And then they took the money and left, right? And I bought all these buildings for nothing. And it was only 2 blocks from the really rich people. And they were gonna build a mall right on the, you know, this one building was really nice building that had burnt on the inside. So you know, I just come from New York City where we took over abandoned buildings, and so burnt out inside was no big deal to me. It was like someone already had done the demo for me, right? So, I got all these guys to rip out the burnt out shit the outside of the building. The structural part was still pretty good, had a brand new roof on it. So, and so that was our first building, and I turned it into really fancy apartments upstairs with skylights and decks and a really nice kitchen and nice bedroom and nice bathroom and a big open space, a great room. I took, had a really tiny flat roof, but it had, a big roof like this. So I took it out a lot. So now it had a 25-foot ceiling, right? And I put radiant heat in the floor because Loco was building a nuclear reactor and they were selling electricity really cheap at that time anyway. And and I put, backup um, heat pumps. No one, what's a heat pump? But I put heat pumps in everything, right? So anyway, the economy came back, and by 87, it was doing good. So I mean, businesses. So the office downstairs, I rented to an insurance company, big time insurance company, right? The building next door to it, same, two really fancy apartments upstairs. Um, it had windows all the way around, so really nice. This guy who was a furrier, right? So those two buildings, the four apartments, five apartments, because the other building was bigger. Um, and this is in '87, right? Right after economic collapse. Those two buildings, we were bringing in close to 20 grand rent every month, right? So I would just buy more buildings with that. And I was using the Warren Buffett motif of buy, borrow, and die. So we paid no taxes, right? So so we were doing that. So I did that for 3 years and I built six houses. We renovated almost eight buildings. And I bought 100 acres of this farm that was right on the Great South Bay, right on the Atlantic, right where, um, East Hampton. But this was the poor, and this is where all the people on welfare were living. These were like little houses that were built in the '60s for the people who were working. Um, union guys who worked in New York City. They bought these little houses so they could go out there and go fishing and crabbing and stuff like that. It's right on the beach. And the other side, so there were about 12 of these little houses right on the water, and another 100 acres that had been the farm, right? And it was like a cul-de-sac. It was Moriches, right? Moriches and East Hampton was just over there. And it was in the deed that you could have a bridge to go on the road. That was the road that ran along the beach into the Hamptons, right? So I could build a bridge from this little almost gated community. And these little houses were great little houses. GE used to have picked up what Sears used to do, like a kit house, and they were George Jetson houses. They were really, interesting. Everything was glass, lots of light. Everything, it was the beginning of the open, kitchen, dining room, living room in one space, and bedrooms over there, right? So these people were on welfare. First the union guys had them for a number of years. Crashed in the '60s, crashed in the '70s. Really ate these things. In the '70s, that's when the county bought them for back taxes, and nobody wanted them, and so they basically just put people on drugs and welfare into these places. And they was made out of concrete and steel and glass, so they were almost indestructible, right? So I bought all that stuff for nothing, right? Fixed all those things and rented them out on the weekend for yuppies in Wall Street. I went to a real estate guy who, was like before there was Airbnb. This guy kind of rented properties in New York City out that way, right? He had these properties, and that's what he was making pretty good money. Europeans, Eurotrash. Anyway, so all the yuppies. So we were renting those houses out in summertime, right? When they wanted to have that summer house on the beach. we were renting them out for 10 grand a month. We could have probably gotten 50 grand a month, but 10 grand. Sure. So we had 8 of those. And then you have to realize that Long Island had been part of New England because back in the day before highways, people got around Long Island and New England on boats. So Rhode Island and Massachusetts were just right there, like, 20 miles away. So virtually everyone in eastern Long Island talked like they were from New England, and they were all farmers. And there were more potatoes being grown in Long Island than Idaho, more corn. So much, it was like the grocery store for New York City because nobody back in the day had refrigeration. So they used to grow the stuff in Brooklyn, and then they built houses. Anyway, so there were all of these New Englandy kind of farms out where I was, and so I bought this one chunk of property that had a revolutionary house. My mom wanted it, right? So we bought that. And again, when I say I, it's my mom, my father. They had the money. It was their, our business. But I, read the small print of it. It was just like the same deal my dad did with my bro. My dad said, "Well, you and I are partners." Well, and after 40 years of my brother selling his soul to build that business for my dad, my father said, "Well, screw you. I quit, and I'm just going to close the business and fuck you." My brother, what? My father made my brother. The way my dad got to be a millionaire was that he forced my brother to pay millions for the business my brother had built. So I knew my father was going to do the same thing. So I was doing like 40 other things, not just that, right? And I found these guys who were desperate, and I gave them a second chance, and I let them run the company, like the hammer and nails, and they did everything. So my father would show up, and they didn't know who he was. Where's Al? And he had no idea about how to build anything, what anything was, but we just kept being successful. And the lawyer just kept saying, let Al do it. I mean, he's making you millions, right? Anyway, so um, I was like still in New York. I was still doing the housing thing. I was still doing my art thing. I was doing this thing called Universal Peace Day this week on the weekend of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We would have a festival in the park right across from Strawberry Fields, and we would get 50,000 people in there every day um, for a week, right? And it was it was like the best part of what a rainbow gathering is. I mean, the city let us do whatever the heck we wanted to because I knew Carrie Shea, who was the fixer for every politician, Democrat or Republican. She didn't care. As long as she got paid and had power, that's all she cared about. And so she let me do anything because the more I did stuff like that in New York, the more New York got groovy. I mean, that's where Soho came from. That's where Tribeca came from. That was all of us moving into the next neighborhood where the rent was cheap and we were artists and we would do all these crazy things because we kind of the first person we crowbarred into it was John Lindsay. We went into his office and listen, stop hassling us for living in Soho. No, it's a piece of crap. We're going to turn it into gold. And we showed him what we were doing. That's where he got Fun City. So there I was in Long Island doing all of this stuff, and then I got involved in the Stop Shoreham campaign. That's why I stayed in Long Island for 5 years because I said I'm going to stay here until I stop this. Now I didn't stop it, but a group of 30 people did, right? And we just never gave up. All I did was put on a good party. You know, all I did was do that. I'd look around, no one was doing what needed to be done. I'd go do that, and not anything else, just do that, right? I mean, I made a film early on when I was had my film business, my video business in New York, and I took a handheld camera and I went to Lilco and said, "Listen, here's all my credentials. I'm been working in nuclear industry now for 15 years. I'm one of you guys. I worked at all the national labs. Go talk to my friends at Brookhaven. Blah blah blah. Oh yeah, yeah, he's a good guy. And he's a filmmaker. So I said, I want to make a film about your story, and this way, because people were starting to wonder, nuclear reactor in Long Island. I don't know. And they were doing it such a heavy-handed way. They were just it's super corrupt, and it wasn't being built by anyone who Babs and Wilcox, GE Westinghouse. There was nobody there except the union and the mob. And the mob never built reactors anyway. So, and they didn't care because the Price-Anderson Act covered their butt. They were guaranteed $16 for every dollar they put into it, and they were taking Milko was taking that $1 from the ratepayers. They weren't even taking it from the stockholders. And if it blew up, Price-Anderson Act didn't hold you responsible. They could just walk away. So that was their business plan. And so I was doing all this stuff, and my father was like, "What the heck is You're not saying he's not kissing the ring. He's not bowing down to me. He's not letting me fucking up the asshole like he did. I did to my all the see all my other brothers and sisters. All of them worked for my dad for 40 years, and yeah, he paid him pretty good, but he treated him like shit. Worse than he treated us when we were kids, and that was pretty terrible. I mean, my dad never beat us, but he was Italian. He had hypoglycemia. He had real PTSD from incinerating the world in World War II. And, he was in charge of sending 190,000 airmen to their death. So he had dreams like you could hear him wake up at night. Ah, ah, so I was pretty familiar with the paranormal, even as a little boy, because my parents were like, screaming, experiencing that, big frigging time. And they were totally wouldn't talk about it, right? Even to the priests, they wouldn't talk about it, right? I mean, my godfather was a cardinal. You think they talked? He knew it. I mean, Cardinal Cushing was a smart dude. He was the first guy to realize TV and church really go together, right? You should go on YouTube, Cardinal Cushing. That was my godfather. Go look at that guy. He looks like Bela Lugosi, right? So he wanted me to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. I mean, that was what he was sculpting me to be, right? So he always kept me just out of harm's way. Yeah. When a nun murdered me in the first grade, he made sure I didn't die. He took me off to St. Patrick's, made sure, Dr. Black came and saw me all the time. And then he, once I was, out of the woods, as they say, he basically, sent me to this sanctuary in Garden City that were Maryknols, right? And priests and nuns together. And they, basically lived in this big, beautiful castle in Garden City where all the rich people lived. And they were all scholars, right? And they didn't wear the collar and they didn't wear the habit. And they wore city clothes. And they were out there in the world helping people, right? And so for 2.5 years, they got me back to where I could talk, kind of, and see, kind of, and hear, kind of, and walk, kind of. And by doing that, it made me, meaning I had an extraordinary stutter, because this nun crushed my larynx. So to talk, it just came out very strange. So they had to teach me how to talk again, and that's why I talk. And if you listen well to how I talk, you can say, he talks different. And one of the things I had to do to get over my stutter is that I had to really kind of think about what I was going to say and like pre-prepare it and roll it out like a tape recorder, right? And so when I do these stories, I kind of have an idea, and that's why it's a shamanic, energetic, because I kind of pump it up. I think about what I'm going to say. The Memorex tape that I use is the shamanic energy, and then I just play it back, and I can interact and go on about my business, but it's I'm and one of the reasons I stuttered is that my brain goes too quick, and people who have dyslexia and ADHD and all of that stuff, it's that their brain is not synced up with this psycho world that we live in, and that the spirit is not connected very well with the. So how about thumbs up, guys? How about one? Come on, let's have at least one thumbs up. I did a talk last week, and Hey there, fish. Hee hee hee. Oh, hey, hey, hey. Or whatever you're saying. And you're the only one there. So, Fish, why don't you tell us about your childhood? I'm telling you about mine. That's why I like fish. She always has a good. What do you think, Fish? About California burning. Edgar Casey said there's going to be earth changes. When that happens, everything's going to change. The United States is going to be like little islands, you know? I mean, and the ocean is going to go the whole Midwest, Idaho to Illinois. It's just going to be a zillion islands. That's like up there above Michigan where all the islands are. That's kind of what happened. And so California is going to get cut in half. There's going to be like these little islands out there in the Pacific, and then a big chunk of water. And then I am the oldest of two. Okay. And so, what was your experience as a child? Oldest of two. You're kind of like who was that character on Voyager? Something of nine, seven of nine. You were oldest of two. So now, can you hear me? You're on the mic. See, I have no idea where the mic is on my stupid laptop. So, and I have to when I'm in the car, I can't just put it on the table. I have to hold it in my hands, and I have really amazing painful arthritis. So to hold it in my hands is like, let's say if someone stuck your hand in a vice and tightened it all the way till your hand turned into a pancake, and then they poured acid onto it, and then they set your hand on fire. That's the kind of pain I feel when I do a show, especially in the car where I have to hold it. If I can put the laptop on the table, I don't feel that. It's my body's always got pain in it. But still on the mic, can't hear you. Really, I'm now holding it up in the air with two fingers, and you still can't hear me. I would say that's not so much me with my finger on the mic. I'm gonna have to next time I go to my guru, have him show me where the mic is. Now I can hear you. Okay. So maybe that's why people weren't listening. They couldn't hear me. But now I have to hold it up with two fingers up in the air, and now my arms really hurt. Really hurt. And still no one has given me a thumbs up. And I'd love to hear from somebody from anywhere on my seven. Yeah. Yeah. 7 or 9. So I'm gonna instead of calling you fish, I'm gonna be calling you um, oldest of two. Oldest of two. and also holding this thing up with just two fingers in extraordinary pain. It kind of makes it a wobbly picture, so you're gonna have to get used to this. So, how about a thumbs up, guys? Anybody? Come on, oldest of two. How about a thumbs up? You know, you can't spare a thumbs up, eh? And how about some money in my PayPal? That would be really good. I might be able to fix my front of my car. My struts are going. And I live in a really bumpy, hilly, farm roady kind of things with cliffs on the side. So one day I'll be do 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 do. Wah! And it'll be your fault. I'm gonna put that on your head. It's your fault. It's your fault. Wah wah, daddy, daddy. Wah wah wah. Everyone complains about their parents. Not me. My parents were so entertaining. I didn't take any shit they said or did. Maybe no, not even when I was young. I would just look because my grandma brought me up, so I had this perspective of what the fuck? What's wrong with these morons? And when I was making him a lot of money, he couldn't stand it that he wasn't in control. So one day, I'm talking to a lawyer and said, "Oh, hey, your father wants us to meet in my office this afternoon." I show up, and we're like right at the zenith of we're gonna really start because the real estate market is at the bottom. The banks are wanting us to borrow money. I have had like three or four, mortgages and took them, fixed them, rented stuff out, and then paid it off. So our corporate credit rating was through the roof. And so we this one bank said we'll lend you $1 million. Right? So I had access to $1 million, not even my father's money, and I was ready to start buying up everything. And I said, well, if I'm going to get rich. This is the only way I'm going to be able to do it. And you know, so I show up at the office, and my dad is there, and he's like steaming, and he's walking, pacing back and forth, and he goes, "You're fired," like Donald Trump. "You're fired." And I go, "Dad, you can't fire me. I'm your partner." "No, you're not. You're my employee." I said, "Really? I thought we signed a contract." "Well, you didn't read it too well, did you? I'm closing the business." "So what are you going to do with all the assets, Dad? We close the business. You're going to have to pay tax, a lot of tax on this shit. What are you going to do? I'm doing the buy, borrow, die thing. You're going to die soon. Why don't we just keep doing this?" "No, you never do anything. I tell you." He goes on and on and on. And I just sit back and smile. And I look over and I knew our lawyer, all lawyers drink. So I went over to his thing and I don't drink. And I just poured myself a super stiff one. I was just sipping away on this nice whiskey. And our lawyer is just kind of and this lawyer was my one of my father's good friends. And this shows you what a friend is, right? So he goes, "Yeah, I don't, you should relax because he is doing the right thing. He's making you a lot of money. He's trying to make sense. Everything your son is doing is brilliant. You probably have close to $4 million worth of assets. Yes, real estate is down. So if you were to sell it now, you wouldn't get any money for it. But real estate always comes back, and he's picking the perfect things. That farm and that farm. He never said, "Why did you do that?" It's like as all these people were like welfare mothers. It's like going, "That's my father." Prejudiced, racist, but he's not. And that's what the people in the Ku Klux Klan church I go to. They're all of that, but they're not. They have this, separation from love. Right? So he goes, "You're fired." And he goes, and neither of you. I'm the only one important here. I all I have to do is say and the lawyer says, "That's right. You can do that. You can close this business down, and it'll basically, throw your son out again." People seem to like to do that to me, but in my life, every time that happens, something better happens. So I haven't really been that upset by it. And so here I am out in the woods, and have not a nickel to my, I got a nickel. I have $400 Social Security. So But in this time of inflation, it makes things so I don't go anywhere. So it's pretty cool. So here we go. I'm not going to say anything, and this is what I'm surrounded by all the time. So, see, it's kind of nice out here. Yeah. But most of the rich people who bought up everything, they can't stand being here. They come, they drive around, they get their boats, they go on their boats, and they can't stand being on the boats. They try and fish, they can't fish. The Florida guy took me out to go fishing, and we sat there, he and his kid, and me, and we found a really nice place in the woods. And I was just sitting there, and he couldn't shut up. And then he took his gun, which he carries all the time, and he starts shooting, um, stones on the other side of the river where there's a house over there. I said, "Yeah, maybe you shouldn't fire in that direction." Right? Yeah. Anyway, he ran out of bullets. And then he just couldn't, his son was fine with just sitting there with a line in the water. And me, I was just happy to just sit there. And after about 15 minutes, he and the way he walked in there was, I can't walk too well, and he walked me through this really crappy piece of woods along the river for about a quarter mile, but the road was just up there. And instead of parking just up there and coming down, anyway, so he basically, I got to go. Let's go. And he got his stuff together and he started walking. I said, I can't go back that way. And I'm just going to walk up here. You go walk there. And I had a chair with me, my folding chair, and that was like my cane. And so I looked at the woods and found a nice deer path that was maybe 20 yards from where I stood up to the road, and it wasn't steep. And so, I said, I'm going to wait right on that road. You go climb up and do that. And then just try. I mean, the only way you can't miss me because you parked at the end of the cul-de-sac to the road. You're going to come right, I'm going to sit right in front of it. No cars have come by for the last whatever we've been here. So just sit there. You come pick me up. So we did, and it took me 3 minutes before they were ready to go. I was already up on the road, sitting in the chair. I said, "Here I am. I'm waiting. We could have parked right here, and you could have walked right there." And so he's going down, and he's slipping on the rocks and falling in the water, and he fell. He caught his nuts between a log, and it was interesting. That's for sure. So. Um, and that's he is the John Birmingham of the rich people of around here, and they're not even rich, you know. They aren't rich. Even Elon Musk isn't rich. if you look at rich, what is it? It is the appreciation of what you got. And seemingly we're not too appreciative of it. And it's going to take us to change our brain to be able to do that. Right? Let's say, how about this? No. What is this stupid thing saying? What does it want me to do? What does it say? Leave site. No. Cancel. Still, no frigging thumbs up. Oldest of two, you still there? You worked full time since you were 16. Well, congratulations. And how was that? Did you have fun doing that? Pretty much. I worked all the time since I was 9 as an electrician, right? Maybe we'll just give you the view of the steering wheel. Oh. And my hands. I'll do hand puppets. Do, 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 do. Hey, how you doing? Okay, how you doing? I don't know. How you doing? What's up? Oh, I don't know. What's up? How you doing? How you doing? I don't know. How you doing? You doing? How you doing? So, work for all the years that I was an electrician, every morning I woke up looking forward to the task at hand. I've never worked for anyone because I always was a contract person in that they needed me more than I needed them. And so every time, no matter what I was doing, and I did a lot of different things, I did it because it was interesting to me. And because of that, um, I never was too concerned with, my career, because that wasn't, see, my self worth was never connected to my career, because what I was doing was having a good time. And that's why I was pretty successful at everything I did because I was having a good time. Now, today, we're in a very interesting transition period. And so my skill set is not as valued as because they have been able to write apps to do a faux version of what I used to do. So, you know, I, and you saw the beautiful place I'm in. So, I'm not really. And I have, I got a good friend, Mr. Bunny, and and no one's watching, and I don't know. Ow. Anyway, so from now on, I'm not doing this. I mean, I pretty much every time I do this because I have a good time doing it. Love to work. I love to work. I love to work. Oh, I love to work. And don't call it work because the Sumerian root of work is torture. I don't know. I keep telling you guys this that the English language is a bastard's brew of spells. Every word has a power over you. So every time you talk about work, it's you're talking about being in jail, right? Being, and instead of taking, you know, you can be doing something. And I mean, a lot of the things I did, especially the corporate stuff I did, is that I would pretty much only take contracts with folk, where I wanted to go, I pretty much all the work I did was down, in from West Palm Beach south, right? The Key. room service, and I forget me driving anywhere. I want a limo, you know, and I would be so much fun because, so the corporation was paying my bill. So the lawyers who I was actually working for, um, they were just working for the corporation. They, had this unbelievably rich life. I mean, super, $1,000 dinners and lunches and going to titty bars 3 times a day and having their own, masseuse who always gave you a happy ending. I mean, I lived that life for almost 10 years and then I died. You know, 10 years, I gained 240 pounds and I was already overweight. I was already 240 or something, 260. I'm right about, I'm a little, I'm just 193, right? My perfect weight is 180, but I'll settle for 193. And but I still lose a pound or two every. I don't gain anything. I lose, right? Because I walk around a lot, and I don't eat anything because I can't afford to, except for the stuff that grows in the forest and in my little in my poor garden. It's only turning out beans. I don't. It's just got a thing in its head that it's turning a lot of beans. So that's my diet: beans and what's in the thing and canned stuff. I got a bunch of canned stuff, right? So the food tastes pretty good. It's okay. It'd be a lot nicer if I had more vegetables, but I have no money. I yesterday, I mean Tuesday, I got no, I guess Friday. Friday, I got my Social Security check, and I spent $300 on groceries and stuff, right? And I buy pretty much the same thing because it has to fit within the construct of my health and my and still no one's giving me a thumbs up. Sorry, I had to work a minute. Okay, no problem. And so the so where I go shopping is pretty much Walmart's and Food Line. Right? And I know exactly what I'm gonna buy. And so I know what it costs. So last year, what I spent $300 on this year, or just this week, my necessities um, costed about 35 bucks. That's and I'm a real careful shopper, so I did buy a few other incendiaries. There was a electric. The biggest ticket item I had was there was an electric blanket on sale. Walmart's when they start bringing stuff on, they sell. That's when they sell it the cheapest. The first truckload is the cheapest. Then it starts going up, and then when the market for it is over, that's when it goes down. That's Walmart's. So I had a very nice electric blanket, and so I bought that because this winter that's going to be my only heat. You know, I really won't be able to afford really heating up my man cave. It'll probably be 40 degrees inside. And the only way I'll stay warm is to wrap that big electric blanket around me. And so that's my physical life, right? And so there won't be a garden. Food may get more expensive, and I won't have gas to put in the car. And my car will probably, unless someone's going to help me out to fix my car, it can rattle along when it's sunny and no snow and no ice. Snow and ice might be a real problem driving this car. So either I go someplace else or I stay here. Um, and last year I stayed here until Thanksgiving, and it was fine. It doesn't really get really cold until it's like a light switch. New Year's gets really cold, but up until then, it's like in the 60s and night in the 40s. I can live with that. When it is in the 30s during the day and in the teens and single digits at night, that's when it gets uncomfortable. And I don't have any water. I have to turn all my water off, right? And drain all my lines. So I have no water. So It's hard to live without water. Well, I do pretty good. I have this really interesting winter contraption that whatever rain or snow falls, it collects in this device, and I have mirrors at the top. So all I have to melt whatever ice or snow, unless it's like the whole thing turns into a chunk of ice, and it forget about it. But if it just does its cycle, it need about 4 hours of sunlight, and it turns it into water, and that is hooked to my toilet, and that's really the only thing I really, really, really need. And it allows me to fill up my gallon milk jugs with water, and that's what I keep in the man cave. And usually, before New Year's, I fill up about 20 um, gallon jugs in the man cave, and they're a heat sink. And so the one place where there's sun, I stick my 20 single gallon things, and it actually kind of heats. These are unbelievably caveman solar technology, and it works pretty good. And I keep telling everyone you should get. So I have a couple of what electricity I have that if I run out of cash and or the electricity goes off, I do have photocells hooked up to car batteries, and I do have 12-volt power. So I do have that, and I do have a 12-volt gizmo that will charge this laptop and charge the phone. That's fine. Yeah. And all those things I kind of made. I guess so many people have told me that I'm from another planet, another time. You know, when I put these on, I can see the future. I can see the past. Up until 3000, you know, things aren't going to change unless we really change. Things aren't going to change, and we're going to have a nuclear war soon, and that won't be fun. You know, I may or may not be, out of harm's way here because I'm down in. The reason why I bought this thing, I'm in a holler. I'm surrounded by mountaintops. So even if a blast, let's say, oh, Irwin, that has a military nuclear facility. They call it commercial. Um, they call it a commercial business, but it makes all the fuel for the Navy. Nuclear fuel for the Navy. But it's a commercial thing. Well, that's obviously a target, and anything within 300 miles of um, Oak Ridge, and so that's anything in Tennessee, pretty much. Especially the cities, like what's the Music City? What are the major cities in Tennessee? They're all and they won't, they will get radiated seriously because they're in the flatlands and there's nothing to stop it. And Oak Ridge is a serious target. They'll hit that sucker with a number of nuclear weapons, and there are a number of bases around there that most people don't know about, and they will be also hit. And they will not use a hydrogen bomb; they will use basically dirty bombs. Right? And if the ice shelf doesn't get us on the coast, Russia's real, you know, end of times weapon is they have these robot nuclear powered submarines, right, that cruise around. There's no real crew on board, and they have these torpedoes, not missiles, but torpedoes. And they're all along our coast. And they go to about 100 miles to our coast, launch the torpedo, and the torpedo just where it starts to become onto the shelf of a continent, they will detonate this um, nuclear weapon that will cause a tidal wave, a tsunami, about 100 feet high, and it will be highly radioactive, and it will wash across 100 miles inland, and then go down into the ground and into the water table, and basically contaminate the land, the earth, and the drinking water of North America for 1,000 years. There's nothing that anyone can do. There's no scraping it off. There's no decontamination. That's just it. Can't live there. So a anything from where the coast is in 400 or 500 miles will be contaminated. You just so forget Boston, New York, D.C., Philly, anything along the coast. Um, all the infrastructure along the coast, all the people. Majority of the people in America live on the coast. Right? So I live in this Sawtooth mountain range, and I picked this place because Sawtooth, no matter, even if let's say they dump a really lot of nasty stuff on top of Oak Ridge and the surrounding 100 miles surrounding. So that I'm about a little less than 200 miles from Oak Ridge. So I'm right on the border of North Carolina and Kentucky, and there's nothing here. There's no real targets here. And so those detonations, first of all, the blast won't really, because I'm surrounded by all these sawtooth mountains. Right? The wind is constantly broken up, and I'm down in a holler. Right, so the flash won't get me unless somebody detonates an air blast right over my head. Um, I'm not really going to be affected too much by um, nuclear war. I will probably get irradiated, but I'm so old that it really won't affect me much. Right? I have 12 to 20 years left. So, and this war may not. It's going to happen in a 35-year period. Right? Somewhere between now and 2050, give or take. And it won't be like a war that will. It'll just mess everything up. It won't kill everybody, right? And I would say by the time we have the nuclear war, we might have a population of 8 billion, but I don't think so. I think I'm looking through these time sensitive glasses here. Still, anybody give me a this, my lord, do I have one thumbs up? Praise Jesus and God. Praise Jesus and God. Praise Jesus and God. I have one thumbs up. Praise Jesus and God. Put my time sensitive glasses back on. So this is what I see happening. First off, all the wars that are going on right now have been planned. They're planned, and you think the pandemic of 2021, 22 was really bad. Oh, it's so bad. Uh-uh. They just made, this judge just one of the best things about Obamacare was all the diseases that could be cured. They make businesses because we don't have single payer. We should have single payer healthcare like everybody else in the industrial nation does, but not us. We let our employers pay for it. So they don't want to pay for it. They're just made to pay for it. So this guy says, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I can't. It's against my religious beliefs to give somebody a medicine that won't will so they won't die of AIDS. They should die of AIDS. So they're terrible people. Those gay people. They should die of AIDS. So I don't want to pay for it." So the Supreme Court, not Supreme Court, but a almost Supreme Court judge said, "Oh, he shouldn't have to pay for that." But the way the law is written and the way the judge wrote her decision doesn't just take the medicine for AIDS off the hook, but every people mammograms, any kind of testing for disease can be construed that it's unconstitutional to do this through Obamacare. So that means 160 million people, more than half the population of this country, will not be able to get any kind of testing to see if they got cancer or breast cancer or colon cancer or any kind of cancer. Or any kid will be, from now on, the kid's going to have to pay for all the kids' care. This one judge, because of this one guy who doesn't want to pay for some gay guy's AIDS medicine, is going to take 160 million people out of, you know, not getting cured. Not, they still can go get chemotherapy and all those all the stuff that costs a lot of money still can be, taken care of. But anything that would get in the way of you getting sick, anything that would stop it before it got bad, anything that could be found. Oh, look at this. Well, if you take these vitamins over here, you won't get that. And well, that's going to go away along with birth control, along with you name it. And so they can't, like, they're seeing that just getting rid of road isn't going to get rid of these other things. So they're going to get rid of them other ways. So that's what I see coming right now, right? The war in Ukraine is going to go on until we have the nuclear war. So anytime, between now and 30 years from now, the Ukraine war is going to keep going on. The Russians have taken 1.6 million people out of eastern, out of Donbass, and out of southern Ukraine because they're pissed off that the Russians are there. So instead of trying to assuage their whatever, they've arrested them and taken them into Russia. And that 1.6 million people, that point 0.6 is children taken away from their families and sold as orphans to rich people in Russia. The oligarchs. Oh, such a bad person. I never had a kid, but I want one now. So I'm gonna buy 6 of them. So all this is doing is bringing 1.6 million people who are going to fuck Russia up from the inside. If that isn't if that isn't a scripted thing to really take Russia out, and this is the Khazarian mob getting even with the Russians for what the Tsar did to them back in the 6th century. Go Google Khazarian mob, right? And that became the Khazarian mob, right? So the Tsar, so basically the Khazarian mob had stuck themselves on the Silk Road, and Russia was making a lot of money out of, or the Tsar was making a lot of money out of that, and that's why Moscow and Leningrad and all those other grads were such amazing cities of Europe in that period of time, up until the revolution. And the revolution was Marxism, and Marx was paid by Daddy Rothschild, who was part of the Khazarian mob, right? And he was, there are these, there's the Hebrew nation, and then there are a few folks who are called Jews. And why were they called Jews? Because the Hebrew folk were always on the move, never satisfied for where they were, and always looking for greener grass on the other side. And basically, they were kind of those guys who would use things up and then move on. And the Khazarian mob was that to the 10th power. And so the Khazarian mob, if you want to know what they were like, I can tell you, they were just like ISIS. I mean, they did the exact same. They took over a little chunk of land, called it a caliphate. They ran it the way they wanted it, and they made sure commerce was going through it. They rape, pillage, kill until they used that neck to the woods up, and then they moved on. Right? We the imperial folk did that in its imperialism age of going and extracting resources, and now the corporate world is extracting resources on a corporate level, not just imperial level. Anyway, so the Tsar stepped on the Khazarian neck because these guys were too close to the Tsar. And he said, listen, guys, I understand what you're doing. I do the same thing, but you're taking a cut out of my pie. So get the frack out of here. And by the way, stop being, pirates, land pirates. You want to be a pirate, go on the sea. But here in the neighborhood, you got to be either Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. And Muslims are basically Christians on steroids. I mean, I'd like to see some Christians pray 5 times a day. And it's the same God. That all 3 of those things are Abrahamic religions. So the Khazarian mob chose to be Jewish, right? And why they were named Jewish and not the Hebrew tribe, because they weren't one of those tribes. And they were traveling with them, right? And they had a lot of bling because they were stealing everything, right? So when they went into, as they moved west into Western Europe, there are all these kings fighting each other. They need money to raise armies, and so they borrowed money from these guys who had the blings, and that's where they got the name. They were jewelers. They couldn't be lawyers, doctors, Indian chiefs, but they could be jewelers, right? So they had all these jewels, and so they became the Anunnaki. And so that's so that's the 13th member of the tribe. So that's what became Zionists. So when the Nazis were looking for the Aryan race, that's who they found. Isn't this funny? So all of this is going to come out in the wash in the next 30 years. Right? It's called karma. Right? The dharmic wheel builds all this energy up and throws it out as karma. Right? And this is all physics. It's not hokey science. It's anyway, but nobody wants to look at this stuff. They want to be scholastics, read the textbook, you know. So have a good time with it. And I'm just, old enough I already had a good time. I've shown you the pictures of all the good. Any more books of the good times? And even when I was old, so when I was in my 50s and 60s, I was still having a good time. This is what I look like in my 50s. You know, this is Ash Pit, North Carolina, when nobody was there, when it was fun to be there. Now it's like hell. Two interstates drive through Asheville, 40 and 26. It's in a bowl. No wind gets through. It has worst air pollution in California. These are all good times. I was in my 50s. I was hanging out with kids who were in their 20s, and we were doing art because there's nobody there. We started a thing called Bell Share by just having a block party up on Wall Street, right? And we blocked off Wall Street, and we had a gigantic party. Everyone in town came, had so much fun. All these kids playing music because at the time, Robert Moog was head of the music department and UNCA, and there was some really great kids. And so that was the best thing about UNCA now. Then was there were all these guys like me teaching and researching and doing stuff there, and so all these really interesting kids wanted to study with these people, and they came. Right, so we had what makes a good school. So and so I left Asheville in basically 98. 96, I knew the jig was up. Asheville was stuck in amber because it was the Paris of the South in the 1920s, and then the Depression happened, and they just spent millions of dollars on turning it into a city instead of just a little village. And so they went bankrupt. So Asheville didn't finish paying off its debt, Depression debt, 1929 debt, until 1996. And once that happened, real estate guys came in because the real estate, you could buy any house there for like $5,000. Now, I could have done the same thing that I did in Long Island because it was the perfect storm, just like it was there. But I said, screw it. That's too much. I've already did that, done that, have the T-shirt. And how did that turn out? Well, how did it turn out? I spent 2.5 years doing that, and my father went nuts and kiboshed it, but it didn't get kiboshed. I had such inertia in building and doing all that stuff, and what I had done was all of those guys. Why it worked out so good is that they weren't my employees. I mean, no one would give them a job. I took them on as employees the first couple projects, and we paid them a paycheck, right? But I said, listen, guys, I have bigger plans than this, and you are going to do it all, and you are going to start your own LLCs. I have this lawyer guy; he's going to do it. He's going to he sees the value of what we've done these 3 buildings in less than 4 months. We got a rent roll of $40,000 in a frigging depression. He's interested in this, so he basically set them up in LLCs, bankrolled them for the first year or two, And basically got all these projects, and they were doing a great job. I didn't even have to be there. I was the guy with the vision. I'd be there, you know, maybe. And when we first got started, first year and a half, yeah, I was there every day, but not all day. And because they weren't any good. They were alcoholics. I was going to stop them drinking. They couldn't. But they had no place to live, so we lived right on building sites. 'Cause we started this in the spring, right? And so we were doing all this stuff, and we lived right on the building sites. These buildings, and we lived in them. And I was cooking, and they were living, and that's why we did them so fast. Because as soon as the light came up, I'd make breakfast, make stiff coffee, you know, and we get to work, and we work from like 6 in the morning till about 2, because from 6 in the morning till 2 they didn't drink, you know. And I gave them a really good breakfast, get them fed, got them a lot of coffee, they could smoke all the cigarettes they wanted, and we work, 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 work. And I had always had the materials right there, just ready to go. They never had to wait; they just kept working, working. And so we did those 3 buildings in less than 6 months before the winter. And so by that time, um, I had bought some other buildings that were homes that we started fixing up, and in the wintertime we lived in them. And then we moved on to other projects, bigger ones. And by that time, they had gotten, they still drank at night. And so I said, so from 3 p.m., start with beer, right? By darkness, um, you know, um, you can drink a little bit of alcohol, but not a lot. And then you have to go to bed. And I'm going to make this nice tea. So around 11 o'clock, everyone drinks the tea, and then you kind of, lie around, and then you fall asleep, and we'll get up at 5:30 and start all over again. And we did. So when my dad pulled the plug, I already had a system running, doing all this stuff, and we had a ton of stuff in front of us. And what happened was, my dad probably had put in maybe $70,000 in doing this in the beginning, right? And buying the first thing and starting it off. But once we got a rent roll, he wasn't really putting any money on, because I just kept putting that money into that checking account, and I could sign those checks, and I just kept doing it. And the bank loved me. And when I started buying lots of buildings, they really wanted to have mortgages. It was unbelievable. And so I was doing the buy, borrow, die motif, right? And and my dad would come, and no one would kiss his ring. Oh, Mr. D, oh, blah blah blah. Oh, let me get on my knees and suck your ass. Oh, that, because that's what he did with everyone in his company and my brothers and sisters, right, for 40 years. He got addicted to that. And he had a charming sensibility. When people who didn't know him thought hey, he's a nice guy. Because he was, right. But I had nothing to do with the suck your asshole part of him, right? I just tried to motivate him into being his better self. When we were making that first year and a half, and we were doing really, he kind of said, because he was, in the War of the Roses with my brother over the corporation, so for his business. He didn't really see what I was doing, but we were making money, and the lawyer kept saying, "Your son's brilliant. This is no, this is tremendous." And his banker was my banker. Oh wow, he's the best. So, I mean, no one was complaining. We were, going up. But once he had nothing to focus on except I don't, I have no control. He's a triple burger. I have no control of this. No one's asking me anything. I have no input. I make a lot of money, but and my son isn't sucking my asshole. And I've totally burnt every bridge with everyone. All my friends hate me. All my kids hate me. Everyone hates me. My grandchildren, everyone hates me. No matter how much money I give them, they all hate me. So what's he do? Calls me to the lawyer's office and says, "We're stopping this." I said, "Fine." I went over, made myself a drink. He said, "You don't drink?" So yeah, I'm celebrating. What? I'm getting away from you, you motherfucking dickhead. And I threw the glass in front of him. The glass went everywhere. I just walked out. Didn't see my father for another 5 years at all. I called my mom on her birthday and said, "Happy birthday. Thanks for having, thanks for spitting me out of your potato hole." Click. 'Cause she's in charge of everything, so whatever he did, she was motivating him to do it. You know, she had a real Freudenscheid, I think, going. She's German, Irish German, that wicked temper of the Irish and alcoholic and that Nazi, you know, brilliance. It's like unbelievable. Anyway, but I love both my parents, right? And so I just hung out with them when they were in their good shape, and I knew they'd come around. I thought they'd be dead. So what happens is, and this is, I knew this would happen too, because our lawyer was so like, oh wow, he kept saying, I wish I was your dad, right? So when my dad did that, pulled the plug, and I just, put everything into my truck and drove into New York because I already was, I never stopped doing things in New York. I had a restaurant there, I had an art gallery there, I had all these other, I had the Universal Peace Day thing going on, and I still had one house to my name, um, kind of. I mean that he couldn't just sell off because it was in a shitty neighborhood, nobody wanted it, so I could still hang there. So anyway, because I still wanted to be part of the Stop Shore. I was going to stop that nuclear power plant no matter what, right? So I kind of had to stay there. And when my father finally sold that place or like gave it away, and it was really a great piece of property, he only waited. Anyway, basically what happened was the lawyer bought up everything, right, for my father, right? And then when my father went to sell, finally squeezed that piece of property out from underneath me, um, the lawyer bought that and said, "You can stay in it for as long as you want." So, none of this, everything my parents have done, and they haven't done everything they've done that someone would say, "They did that to you. I can't believe it. It's so terrible." No, everything that has ever happened to me has been for the better. I've always had a better outcome. So here I am. I showed you where I live. It's beautiful. It's nice. It's really quiet, you know. And for the time being, this is fine. And I know something's going to pop up that will be as interesting. It'll be a new chapter in my life, right, until I die. So, and I've offered, hey, I'm ready to do it. Powers that be, you guys are the only guys who really watch this. You could use me at this time. I could help you navigate as I've had in the past through. You don't really want, you need a new. You're just desperate for a new business plan, and you keep doing the same business plan over and over. No, stop it. Okay, hire me, right? And I'm the better improved Al Bob. You know, and that I am. My metal has been tested. So anyway. So I just wanted to say that to you guys. Let's see, put my glasses on to see if anyone is still there. And then I will be off and I'll see how many people watched. And, like last show I did for about an hour and a half, like 6 people showed up. Yeah, no one's here. I got one thumbs up. And oldest of two. I'm sure you're the person who threw it up there. So thanks, person. So I'm out of here. You may or may not see me later. Um, depending on where I am. But I wish the best for everybody. Oh, look, 2 hours. That's pretty amazing. So it's almost noon. Okay.